Okay. Well, no, I can't take my
tights.
tights.
Women that left their shoes on there, bro. Sorry. It's all good, man.
But so we're talking about ring psychology.
Sure we are. All right.
With Bruiser Graham.
Are we started yet?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, you might want to ask the first.
Oh no, I'm taking the video off. You're fine.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, go ahead.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, a little bit of a journey here for me to get into the sport. I was little, of course, and became a fan at a young age, like most people. And my dad used to take me to some of the live events at Lynchburg, Farmville, surrounding area, Appomattox. And I, as a kid, I loved it. I loved the atmosphere, the crowd reaction, the sporting aspect of it, and I always had a tendency as a kid to kind of root for the bad guys. And I remember my dad taking me to Lynchburg, and one time I believe it was the Super Destroyer was one of my favorites. And he actually lost a match, and I cried. So, that was, it had me hooked at a young age. And just from there, I always had an interest in it, always watched it, and then eventually just had an opportunity to get into it. And I didn't know how far along I would get into it, but I've had a really a good journey with it.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd say you've been wrestling for, 25 years?
Yes, I started actually going to wrestling camp in '95. And just to backtrack a little bit, I got out of college and was wondering what to do as a profession. And I saw actually in a wrestling magazine where Ivan Koloff had a wrestling camp in Charlotte. And I saw where Jimmy Valiant had a wrestling camp near Christiansburg in a little town called Shawsville, S-H-A-W, Shawsville. And me and my dad one day, I had a day off work. We went to both camps the same day. I went down to Ivan's, went to his house. He was very nice. He had explained to me they did training 4 times a week, which was, I believe, Wednesday, Thursday, and the weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
That would have required me to move to Charlotte. So I had, after that visit, same day went to Jimmy Valiant's house and talked to him about camp. And the advantage to that was it was once a week, every Sunday from 12 to 4. And I could still stay where I was in Virginia, just drive up there once a week. So eventually I decided to go with Boogie's Wrestling Camp.
Okay. I know you've been you've been honing this craft for a long time.
It's been a long time, and the good thing about going to someone like Boogie's is he is an established name. He's been all over the world. He's in the Hall of Fame, and he worked for many different promotions. Mm-hmm. And he knows, as we were talking about the psychology of not only wrestling at the house shows or the arena shows, but doing television, running a promotion, because he's been around, Jerry Lawler and Jeff Jarrett and some of the best in the business when it comes to running a promotion. He worked for Vince McMahon Sr., so he knew how he ran his organization, and he knew how they ran differently in the North, the South, the Western territory. So, all the psychology of that in any territory is different. So, there are some common threads in wrestling, psychology-wise, that go through, the whole wrestling business. But, different areas have different psychology. So he got a little bit of everything, and as a result was able to pass that knowledge down to his students.
Right, and I was about to say, even something as minor as he was, if I'm recalling correctly, he was the very first man to put anything on his tights, being the end on the back.
That is correct.
Not only differentiated him in the minds of, the fans, but he actually kind of got a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Intimidation factor.
Yeah, that, and he was, at first he was a heel, and he started out as the brash, cocky, heel. Hey, I'm not from around here, but I'm better than you, and all this kind of stuff. And you know, he's the first one to come out to an actual, like a song theme music kind of thing. At least, you know, that's what he says. You know, everybody thinks they're the first at everything.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's different variations, but I had really never seen anyone come out to music like he did, and like gotten over with the crowd like he did. You know, the psychology of Boogie was, he used to tell me, hey, if everybody's coming out to music, I'd be the one not coming out to music. You know, that's to make you stand out, to make you different, to make people pay attention to you. And that all goes into the psychology of the wrestling, of his character that he was creating. And plus, it was just an extension also of his personality. You know, he was going to stand out in all the aspects of life, but especially the wrestling. He figured out, well, hey, if everybody's got a beard, I'm going to shave mine. If everybody's coming out to music, I'm not coming out to music. If no one's coming out to music, I'm coming out to music.
Yeah. And that kind of carries over to different characters like, you know, like him or hate him, you know, Joey Ryan, with his little bit grotesque penis suplex. And then you have people like Orange Cassidy who don't, their characters, they don't really care, so they'll, you know, do these great acrobatic feats, but with their hands in their pockets. But yeah, what's your, I guess, process about preparing for a match and
well, you know, any kind of match, it's kind of like, you know, what I was saying, they're different. And the beautiful thing about wrestling is I've wrestled, you know, basically teenagers, I wrestled midgets, I wrestled women, I wrestled, you know, Hall of Famers, I wrestled movie stars, Batista, you know, I wrestled Mabel, who was 500, 600 pounds. I wrestled midgets, and, you know, it's just, there's different aspects of preparing. You know, that's the wonderful thing about wrestling. It includes everybody. All different sizes, shapes, weights, colors, it doesn't matter. You know, if you're an outside anywhere in wrestling, you can find a home. So as far as, you know, for prepping for a match, you would, you know, take into account what you can do well, what your opponent can do well. And if you guys have to work things out, you know, it's kind of like you play to each other's strengths. If you're working for television, which is definitely a different ball game, you have a set time that you can be in the ring, and, you know, everything's got to go usually quicker or whatever, but you still got to get the psychology in the television match. But usually the promoter or whatever will have a certain way for it to go, and you've got to figure out how to get there in the allotted time limit.
Right. Okay. So basically just fill it with what you know, and basically the synergy of you and your opponent.
Right, and, you know, keep an open mind, because I've been in there with guys that can do everything, you know, like, just say, for instance, Jason Kincaid, who some of you may or may not know, he's been on Ring of Honor. He can do all kinds of acrobatics, and he's got great psychology, and he can just do anything in the ring. And then I've been in there with guys that, you know, can't lift their finger up. So, you know, it's just, then you have to pretty much dictate the match yourself and play to your strengths. And, you know, there's sometimes when guys have been in it 6 months and they think, well, you know, I can do this well, but they really can't do that well.
Right.
So you've got to kind of adjust to that, and, you know, it's just, it's kind of just a give and take. And there's some days, like any other sport, you're going to have, you know, the worst match of your life, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, just maybe you and your opponent don't click, maybe you're off, maybe you're not feeling well, maybe you have an injury, and that sort of thing's going to happen. So, you know, if you're only wrestling twice a year or 3 times a year, you know, hey, it's harder to get over those. But as me and Boogie traveled on the road, we were wrestling 3 to 4 to 5 times a week for 10 years. So, you know, you just got to realize, hey, every match is not going to be Hulk Hogan versus Bundy, or, you know, whatever, a classic like, you know, Benoit and Guerrero, or, you know, something like that. Or, you know, it's just not going to be a classic every time. But you do what you can, do the best you can, and, you know, that's you know, the name of the game.
Yeah, so you had me a little bit worried there, considering we're going on in like what, an hour. But okay. And I was about to say, you know, talking about doing what you know and working with your opponent. I know Zin and I have talked about a certain match. I can't remember what year it was, but it's Will Ospreay versus Ricochet, And we didn't realize it was 22 minutes because it was nothing but high flying and, you know, frequent rest, but it was mostly spot fest.
Right.
Which some people like, some people don't. It was actually a big controversy just because, you know, people are like, well, that's not wrestling. But one thing if I made, like, I guess, do, like, a little bit of a shoot on this one is why do I use that phrase? That pretty much all of it's wrestling.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
it's all
like
part
I
of
was telling you about the wrestlers, it encompasses everything. You know, there's
Mhm.
different styles. Even back, 20 years ago, there was WWE style, there was NWA style, which was more the southern. Then you had ECW crop up, more hardcore Philly style. So,
Oh, yeah.
and now everything's on television, Facebook, it streams, whatever.
Yeah, so
People
everywhere.
see it more, and it's kind of inundated with the hours and hours that are actually on there. So you've got to do stuff to keep it exciting. And the new, as you would say, the spots or whatever that come one right after the other, it appeals to the younger generation. So you've got to do a little bit of everything to appeal to the mass variety of people.
That's fair. You guys have any questions, comments, concerns?
Nope, just listening.
Okay. I just think it's funny. You just got a chessboard, and here we are thinking about psychology. I don't really have much of anything.
And the only other thing I would add is, with like me and my dad running on promotion for the last 20 years, the psychology of, as I've learned, matchmaking, keeping good matches going, so the crowd will, it's like any other thing. If you have a product and it sucks, people aren't going to come back. But we've had, good crowds for the last 20 years, and for an independent promotion, that's fairly unheard of. So, I've been pretty blessed to be around guys like Boogie in the business that knew what they were doing, to actually go to television, to work television matches, work house show matches, just to know the different aspects of what it takes for all those kinds of different atmospheres. So, it's just one of the best sports as far as psychology, because wrestling is, although it's a certain formula to it as far as matches, it's still very open-ended, and you can make it what you want, and that's the trick of the psychology of it, is making it what you want and to get the people with you and kind of seeing your perspective of what you're trying to do in there.
Right, because you have guys that kind of like Hart that you consider ring generals because they can guide the entire match.
Right.
Whereas you have some that they rely on them, or like the pre-planner, like Ramy Sabai or Sami Zayn, also previously El Generico, who would bother the crap out of other wrestlers, but he knew what a good match should consist of.
Right.
So, tell me a little bit about match flow, I guess, since we're on the subject of what a good match consists of.
Well, again, that's changed through the years. When wrestling first started, it was more of, hey, wearing down your opponent. There was two guys in the ring. It was more of a, kind of a stretching mat work kind of deal. It had kind of evolved, and, when television started, they had the traditional heel babyface matchup, and then it was the whole psychology of that, and then, as you know, it was like the foreigners against the USA psychology, and then it was, as you even evolved it further, it was more like, hey, the hometown boy, and, especially with the independents and little smaller promotions like Smoky Mountain did with Tracy Smothers. It was somebody from that area, and, they would just feed him different kind of bad guys and heels to, go against him. So, and now it's not really bad or good because, Stone Cold kind of changed. Yeah, you can be a heel, but you can still be bad, and, just the people cheer you. There's nothing really different about your style. So, it's just evolved into that, and now even with the spots, it's more just two guys going at it, not just a give and take. It's not just a traditional babyface versus heel thing anymore.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, and that's kind of the development of the character. And actually, I noticed during the '90s, there was actually a really big influence on just like the injury angle. I mean, that's more or less been there, but like, not even really the injury, but like working body parts essentially.
Right.
Like of course, Kurt Angle, he's going for the legs, but usually it's like if once someone shows weakness, it's withering down that particular area of the body.
Right.
So that's just one thing I kind of picked up on. Yeah.
And if you ever want to see that in a tag match, watch some of the old Midnight Express or the Andersons, and just wearing down that one body part. That was their thing, and they do it nowadays to an extent, but it's all for television, and you can't really seriously injure a guy now because it'll take him off television time.
Yeah.
So you can't do that and shoot for a rematch next week if you break the guy's leg or really mess up his leg. So it's got to be. Even so, last week, I'll even take a recent example I saw was Rude and Ziggler hurt one of the Street Profits' legs last week. They came back in a rematch this week, and Ziggler and Rude won the belts because of the guy's injured leg.
Right.
So, they kept to the storyline, but it wasn't something that was drawn out like it was in the older days, 6 months or whatever. You heard her break a guy's leg, and then he's got to come back. Sort of like the Wahoo and Valentine feud, if you ever familiarize yourself with that, where Greg Valentine wore this shirt that said, "I broke Wahoo's leg," and they did that for 6 months before they had the final match in the feud. But this was just a week, and boom, that was the angle. That's because of the television and how fast things are now.
Right, and unfortunately, a lot of times with like social media, you hear about like, oh, this person got signed onto a movie deal, so it's like, okay, well, we know that they're dropping the belts or something's happening. And I think I do like what WWE kind of does, where they're doing like they're actually having everybody kind of play in. Like you see someone like Kevin Owens, and he's like, oh yeah, look at me and my family at the this was back when he was a heel, but look at me and my family at the zoo, and then someone was like, oh my god, you guys are so great and so beautiful, and he's just like, yeah, shut up, nerd. Or like, you wish you could be this beautiful, and it's like he's still playing his character while showing his life.
Right.
But you still get that level of interaction with this character. And of course, you had something like that with the Shield, where they come out through the crowd, and Sandman would sometimes come out through the crowd. So definitely a lot of crowd interaction really helps build character.
Right.
If it weren't for crowd interaction, Daniel Bryan, whatever you want to call him, where would he be?
And that's like, as I was talking with Boogie, when he did come out to music and dance in the crowd and partied with people, hey, everybody liked him, that's the thing. Mm-hmm. And he always told me, he was like, hey, if I'm going to go out there, because he was known for kissing people, he was like, I'm going to kiss the ugliest woman in the crowd. That way everybody thinks I'm crazy. And that's true. That's what he did. Yeah. And then he went to, he kissed guys, whatever. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
So, they just think he's nuts, and people like a crazy guy like that. He's kind of fun-loving. And the crowd interaction got him, over where he was in Crockett, where he stayed 8-10 years on top. He was always figured in. So, work on your character. And like I said, most time the character is just an extension of yourself. So.
Oh, yeah. Matt and our entire gimmick is based on Warhammer 40K, because we're just a bunch of nerds. I think Aaron over here can attest, as he's one of the people the main person that got us into the lifestyle. Basically, I guess, to summarize, you can just do what you know best and expand upon it.
Right, just do that, and you'll learn. The best way to learn is in front of people and doing your thing, and you'll learn what works and what doesn't work for you, and just incorporate what you do. And if you like somebody, use some of their psychology, as far as the people you look up to, and just if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, hey, just go on to something else.
Yeah.
But just be yourself, basically, and just if you play into any psychology, just making an extension of yourself. Maybe an over-the-top extension, but an extension.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I see we're at about the 20-minute mark. I know you got to get ready for your match, so
Fair.
I appreciate it, and
Thank
let
you.
everybody come out and see us when we get back going.
Yeah.
Bruiser Wrestling Federation Facebook and BruiserProWrestling.com on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody got anything?
Thanks.
I'm gonna step away.
Thanks for the input. It's
Yeah.
been really informative.
And thanks for the training as always, and for everything.
All right,
Who do you pull from the most, would you say?
who do I pull from the
Yeah, I
most?
mean, as far as psychology and influence goes.
Influence was probably a little bit of Boogie, a little bit
Oh, yeah.
being a heel, now not his fun-loving thing, but being a heel or, going to different places and seeing like Lawler run television and just the psychology of what he does at the television. Just how to pull in a crowd when you know how a crowd's reacting. How to kick it up a notch when they're kind of sitting on their hands, not saying anything, and just trying to get the crowd involved. So, I mean, I think with that, Boogie and Lawler, and even seen them working in person, guys like Terry Taylor, Midnight Express, they just a little bit of them had just how they can have the crowd in the palm of their hand. So, and rock and roll when they were, on
Ricky
top, baby
Morton.
faces, yeah. When they, could have the crowd just eating out of their hand, and Ricky Morton would, be, getting beat up, and just, he would have the people believing he was near death. So,
Oh, yeah,
You
he's
know.
a great seller.
so it was.
Great guy, too.
So it was just the facial expressions and everything. So, it was really, you pulled from a little bit of everybody.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
All right, well, does anyone else have any more questions? If not, I guess we'll call it a wrap.
call it a wrap.
All right.
Wrap.
Wrap.
Cut.
Wrap.
All right.
Got the
recording.
Wrap.
No.
Wrap.
Wrap. Wrap. Rappy.
Hip hop.
Hippie. Poppy. Gimmick.
Gimmick.